Hi everyone, I'm Halima Naurapamali. I'm going to take you through some activity and resource in Moodle. The main focus of this video is on quizzes, assignment, question bank, and grouping. The main function of the grouping is when you give an assignment in a class and you want to divide them into certain number of groups. That's when the grouping will be of help to you. Without wasting much of your time, let's go through the video. When you want to create a question on the Moodle site, there are two ways to do it. It's either you have a question bank where you can have a lot of questions put in there for later use, or you can just create a question on the course page. I advise you to create a question bank because it will be very helpful. Instead of you creating different questions in different semesters, so it's better to have a question bank which you can reuse the questions later for another semester. So what we are going to start with is we click on the drop down and then click on more. When you click on more, you scroll down to the question bank. If you look at this, you have questions, you have category, you can import question or export question depending on what you want. So you can click on question bank. This is what you have. You still have this. So the first thing you do when you are creating a question in a question bank is to create a category. Since you are going to create a lot of questions, so it's better to have a category for it. At least you know when you want to review it, you know where to go. So this is the parent category, which you have. Any category that you set up will be there. So what we do is to get the name for the category. We can write it as ATI 101 if you want to, depending on what you want the name of the category to be. There is no need of adding a category information, or if you want to. So when you set up, you just click on add category to add the category. Since we have already added our category, we go back to the questions. To create a new question, you can click on create a new question here. So we have several question types. We have the multiple choice, true or false, matching, and lots more. So you add the question based on the question type you have. So what we are going to add is a multiple choice question. So you click on it and you click on add. So when you click on add, this is what you get. This page is going to open for you. So what you do is you select the category to prevent mix-up, and then you put on the question name. For example, you want to have different questions, like the quiz, you want to have maybe 10 or 15 questions depending on what you want. So you can just write Q1 question 1, or you can type it complete depending on what you want. So the next thing is you type in the question text. Maybe algorithms contains, since it's a multiple choice question, default mark, you can leave it as 1, or if you want to. And then the general feedback, if you want to put a general feedback, you can put in, or if you want to add a question ID, you can put it too. And the main use of this one or multiple answers, if maybe the objective question has 2 answers or 3, so you choose the number of answers that you have. But for this question that we are setting up, since we have only 1 answer for it, so we are going to leave it that way. For the number, the choices, what you do is you set up depending on the type of numbering that you want the question to come out with. But we are going to leave this lowercase letters. Show standard instructions if you want to. You do your setting depending on what you want or how you want the thing to look. So for this, the first question, we might put it as input. So what you do, if this choice, the first choice, is your answer, so you select 100%. But since the input is not the answer, so what we do is to just leave it none. So if you want to have a feedback again for the question, you can still put a feedback. After the student have finished attempting the question and submitted, so they can view the feedback while they are viewing their results. Then for the second choice, you might put it as output. If the output is correct, you can select 100%. Or maybe when you have two answers, you can select it as 50-50, making sure that you have given a good percentage for your answer. But since this one is not correct, we just leave it as none. Then for the third choice, we can put it as, so this is our answer. So what we do here is to make it 100%, making sure that this is the correct answer. So the same goes, you have several multiple choice. You have like 5 choices here. So if you have a question that have more than 3 choices, you can put, or if you have a question that has more than even 5, you can add up another choice here. So if you want to have a combined feedback, you can add it to here. Then the same goes for multiple tries or tags. So you set up the settings based on what you expect from the student. So when we are done, we click on Save Changes. After we have already created the questions in the question bank, so when you want to set up the question on the course page, the first thing you do after you have launched your course page is to turn the editing on. So if you see there is difference between the time that our edit and now that we have turned the edit on. So if you want to add the question, the quiz on the course page, what you do is you go below the topic that you want to add. Then you go by the right hand side, you will see add an activity or resource. So you click on that. When the page opens for you, here you have all your activities and resources. So you check for your quiz and click on it. So the first thing you do is to type a name. Give the quiz a name. Maybe you can put algorithm quiz. Timing. The main use of the timing is to set up the day you want the quiz to start and the end date. Just the open day and the close date. So what you do is to enable the closing and open date. You set up the day you want the quiz to start. For me, I'm going to maybe, since it's just a trial, we are just going to use 10th August. Make the timing to be 00. That means it's going to start at 12 early hours of that day. So when you are closing, you set up the closing date. It might be a week after the opening, 1 month, 2 months, depending on what you want. So I'm going to leave mine on the 13th of August. So I'm going to put it as 23:59. So if you want to have a timing, that means you want to time the student. So enable it and set up either the time, maybe weeks, days, hours, minutes or seconds, depending on what you want. For me, I'm not going to set up any timing, so that's why I disable it. The same goes for when the time expires. So you have a lot of functions on the drop down. So you use it. And another thing is, if you are really confused or not too sure of the use of a field, you can just click on this question button. It gives more explanation on the use of the field. The same goes with the grading function. When you have a grading category, now that we don't have, so there is no need of us using it. Then the pass grade. You can put it maybe if you want it in a percentage or in points, depending on what you want. Then the attempts allowed. It's not advisable for a quiz to have unlimited attempts. So it's better you give maybe 1 attempt, 2 attempts, depending on what you want. Then for the grading functions too, if you are still confused, you use the question mark button for more information. Then for the question behavior too, you can set up what you want. This review options is very useful, and I advise you when you are setting up your quiz to go through it very carefully. What you want the student to see immediately after the feedback, or later, or after the quiz has closed. So you set it up. This question mark button too will be helpful here. So that's where you will know what you are going to leave for the student. That's the attempt. If you want to leave the attempt, whether correct or not, you can disable it, since you don't want the student to know at that very hour. Then the marks, if you want to leave the marks, or you disable it too. So it's advisable to go through this and set it up very well. There are a lot of things on the settings which, if you go through them, will be very helpful to you. Another thing is the restriction. So on the restriction, main use of the restriction is maybe when you want to start a course and you want to restrict the student to have access to the quiz until maybe several certain activities has been done. So this is where the restrict access help you. And another thing, maybe if you can neglect using the timing, you can neglect using the timing up here. The one we set up already, you can neglect using it. You can disable them and just decide to use the restrict access, because it also gives you the function of date, the grading, user profile. So you could do the restriction based on what you want. Maybe you can leave it as 8, depending on what you want. The same way we set up on the timing. So this shows the time the quiz should open. So you have to go back and click on the add restriction again and click on the date. So this shows from, that's the day of the opening, and then you select the drop down here to select until. Until means the closing date. So if you are done with the setting up of the quiz, so what you do is either you save and return to course, or you save and display. If you look at this, this is the quiz that we set up. It shows the day, start, the ending date, and the activity that is restricted. So if a student clicks on this, it won't give them access until this date and if they have done this activity. The next thing we do is to click on our quiz. So if this page opened for you, the next thing you do is to click on edit quiz. So you have a fresh page, you have no question. So the next thing you do is to click on this drop down by the side of the add. So if you want to add, maybe you don't have a question on the question bank and you want to add a question. So this is what you do, you click on the add new question. But since we already have a question on the question bank, we are going to click on this from question bank. If you remember, we only set up one question there. So what we'll do, I'm going to select this 3 questions from there, and then when you select the questions that you want them to reflect on the course page, you click on add selected questions to the quiz. So those are the questions that you selected from the question bank, and they reflect here. You know, on our default mark, we left it as 1. If you want to add additional mark to it, you can do it either here or while you are setting up the question from the question bank. So if you want to add the marks of the question, you just click on this, the pencil-like shape here, click on it. Then you have access to change the marks. If you have already imputed the score, so you just click on enter for the changes to reflect. The same goes to the second question. If you still want to do the same thing for it, make sure that the marks you have tallies with the maximum grade that you have there. If you look here, we have 6, so we can just click on this put 6 and click on enter for it to reflect. So we have our 6 marks here. The main work of this shuffle is to reshuffle the questions. Maybe a student have logged in, started attempting the question, and maybe he logged out or network or something. So if you click on this shuffle, it changes the position of the question. Maybe it's question 1 will be shuffled back to maybe question 10, 3, 5, depending on what the shuffle give you. And if you have maybe 10 students in a class, my question 1 as a student might not be the same as for another student. Maybe my question 1 might be Miracle's question 2 or Mr. Shogun's question 3. So depending on what the shuffle give to the student. So this shuffle too is very important when setting up the quiz. So when you are done with imputing the score, you just click on save to save all the activities that you have done there. So we just click on this to go back to the course page. We can just click on the quiz to see the format of it. Click on the attempt quiz. So this is what is going to give. So now that our editing is on, the next thing we'll do is you go to below the topic that you want to add the activity or resource, and by the right hand side you click on activity or resource. So when it opens for you, you will select what activity or resource you want. Since all our activities and resources are matched here, and we want to add an assignment, so we'll click on assignment. So the first thing you do is to give the assignment a name. It can be anything, depending on the name you want to give it. But I'm giving my own algorithm assignment. This is where you put your content. That's the question and everything that you want to give to the student. I've already displayed the content that I have for the student. These functions might be helpful for you when you want to adjust anything, or you want to add a video or set up a link. So I want to set up a link for this, so I will highlight it and click on this. So here I already have my link that I want to use, so I will just copy the link from here and then paste it here. So you have an alternative of opening the link in another tab. So I'm going to open it in another window here. So after you have done this, you have pasted your link and enable the opening in a new window. So you just click on this to create a link. So you have already created a link here. So whenever a student accesses this, if he clicks on it, will take the student to that page that you have already linked the algorithm to. The next thing is if you want to add a video. So when you are adding a video, what you do is make sure your cursor is in the place that you want the video to be. So I also have a link that I've already copied that I'm going to copy from here. Then I'll go back to my assignment. So since we are inserting a video, so we'll use this. We select either audio or video. So since it's a video, we select a video and then paste the URL that you have copied. So if you want to change any display, any settings from here, you can still do that. So I'm not changing anything from here, so I'm just going to click on insert. So after giving a brief introduction and a video that will guide them through, so an assignment is given to the student here. Make it to be bolder. So if you want to attach a file, you can add up here. So for the settings, when you give an assignment, it's not immediately that you expect a student to submit. So the same goes the way we set up for our quiz. You set up the day you want the start of the submission and the due date. So if you set up the due date and you did not set up a cutoff date, when it reaches the due date, it will still allow the student to submit, but it will be showing the time they exceed for the submission. And when you enable this cutoff date, so that means the student would not even have access to the text editor that they are going to type in the answer to the assignment. So these are the difference between the due date and the cutoff date. For the remind me to grade date, this is just like you setting up as a reminder for yourself. For the submission, we have two types of submission. It can be online text or files. If you please enable the online text and enable the file submission, it's going to be a document that the students are going to submit. Then for the online text, it's just like you giving them the text box that they are going to put in the content of the answer. You can just go through them, set up what you want, and if you are confused, you still use the question mark to guide you more. If, for example, you give an assignment to a student and you want them to be in a group, so you have to create. That's where you can use the restrict access, where you restrict the student based on their group. Then for the grade, either you choose none, scale, points, depending on what you want. And you have to put the maximum number of grade you have. If you put 100, it is going to be grading in percentage. So if you put 60, depending on the score that you put, that's what the system will use. Grading method, either a simple direct grading, marking guide, if you are going to give a marking guide, or if you are going to upload a rubric as a guide for you when you are marking. So depending on what you want. You have a lot of settings here that you want. So you just follow each of it and set up what you want. So it's all that you are going to get from the student is based on the setup that you do here. So if you are done with the setting up, then you either click on save and return to course or save and display. From the student side, I use the algorithm assignment. I set it up using file submission. And for this assignment too, I set it up using online text. It's either you use the file submission, which the students are going to upload a document, either a Word document, Excel document, PowerPoint, and what have you, depending on what you want the student to upload. And if it's the text editor, you enable the text editor and set up the settings, and the students are going to type in the content there. So both ways the students are going to save their changes and then the lecturer can view. So that is what we have for the assignment. For the grouping, hopefully when we reach the class, that's when we are going to learn about the grouping. Thank you.